Hello and welcome to my franchise rewatch for the MCU. My reason for doing this is that I haven't done an MCU rewatch since one of the last Avengers films, likely Infinity War, but it could have been Endgame, which was before I had a Letterboxd account, and I've been having a tough time rating and ranking their recent films. I'm hoping to finish this series before Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out. This will be a 4-part series with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania either getting lumped in with Phase 4 or having a separate video, depending on when it comes to Disney+. I'm assuming at some point in April, but you never know. All the films that I will talk about in this video are available to stream on Disney+, except for The Incredible Hulk. Without further ado, let's get to the reviews. Starting with Iron Man from 2008. Robert Downey Jr. is the perfect Tony Stark, and I couldn't see anyone else doing a better job. Terrence Howard was okay as Rhodey, but Don Cheadle plays the role better. Something I love about the early Marvel films is the physical costumes, and the Iron Man suits in this film are fantastic. Jensen was one of my favorite characters in this film, and his death was very impactful. The chemistry between RDJ and Gwyneth Paltrow was very believable, and you'll continue to see it in future films. The CGI is in no way perfect, but it holds up quite well for a 15-year-old film, and could be equal to the recent MCU film's rushed VFX. Viewers' immersion in this film is also helped by shooting on location rather than on a green screen or in the volume. I also noticed stylistic similarities to Michael Bay's Transformers, which came out only a year earlier, but may have something to do with Paramount distributing both films. I rated this a 4 out of 5. Now let's move on to The Incredible Hulk from 2008. This is the one MCU film that has been buried deep in the shadows. It's not even available on any streaming service. Before I get into this review, I should mention that I generally have a bias against Edward Norton. His acting is not the worst part of this film, but it doesn't help this incredibly flawed film. Liv Tyler and Edward Norton have no chemistry whatsoever. She also doesn't have any chemistry with Ty Burrell's character. William Hurt, rest in peace, carries this movie on his performance as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. My problems with this film lie in its editing, story, and poor character decisions. One editing mistake that I caught was there's a chase scene through the streets of Brazil that starts at night, shifts to sunrise in seconds, and then goes back to night. A poor character decision is basically that if bullets don't hurt the Hulk, why do the soldiers think that a tranquilizer dart would work? Why even try to fight the Hulk when nothing you do will slow him down? You're just making him angrier and thereby stronger. The soldiers would be better off just running away and trying again later when he's Banner again. This might have been a better movie if they had framed it as Hulk being an unseen force and an antagonist until his heroic turn near the end. Somewhat like Wolverine the Long Night, which is a podcast that I listened to and I greatly enjoyed. Either that or showing the audience the struggle between Banner and Hulk. The CGI in this movie also looked like a video game cutscene, which you can actually compare when you see the film to its actual video game tie-in. I rated this a 2 out of 5. Now let's move on to Iron Man 2 from 2010. As I said in my Iron Man review, Don Cheadle is an excellent replacement as Rhodey and plays the role better than Terrence Howard. Samuel L. Jackson also gets an expanded role as Nick Fury in this film compared to his previous post-credits scene appearance. Scarlett Johansson was good as Black Widow, although she was tasked with a lot of setup for the future of the MCU. This film had some great character moments, but a lackluster story bogs them down. My two favorite scenes in this film are when Justin Hammer is doing the weapons demonstration for the War Machine armor and the soldiers aren't having it, and when Tony is watching the video his father made for him. I rated this a 2.5 out of 5. Now let's move on to Thor from 2011. This film was surprisingly entertaining for me in this rewatch. The Shakespearean tone worked quite well for Thor's introduction into the MCU. There's a pretty good cast, with Chris Hemsworth pulling off a believable Thor, Anthony Hopkins doing an excellent job as Odin, and Idris Elba pulling off a stoic yet badass Heimdall. The Warriors 3 is where it loses some of its dramatic elements and becomes a bit goofy, but a bit of levity is generally necessary. The chemistry between Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth is decent. It's not as good as RDJ and Gwyneth Paltrow, but better than Liv Tyler and Edward Norton. Saving the best for last, Tom Hiddleston stole the show as Loki, the slightly sympathetic antagonist. The issues in this film, for me, are more cosmetic. You know, Thor's awful bleached brows and beard, for one. Another, it uses too many Dutch angles. It's almost like they had issues with their tripod. I rated this a 4 out of 5. Now let's move on to Captain America the First Avenger, also released in 2011. This was the first MCU movie that didn't look as stylistically similar to the Transformers movies to me. Chris Evans is the perfect Steve Rogers, but I don't see him being able to pull off the similarly Boy Scouted character Superman. That doesn't really matter to this anyways, but whatever. Hugo Weaving chewed up his role as the Red Skull, and it's disappointing that he wasn't able to return for the Avengers films of Phase 3, despite his replacement Ross Marquand doing a pretty good job. One problem I had with this film is that Erskine's death is not as impactful to me as Jensen's. I bring this up because both characters fill a mentorship role at some point for our main character. I also found that Cap didn't actually beat Red Skull compared to other MCU movies where the character's plan does defeat their antagonist. Despite not beating Red Skull, his sacrifice near the films end is very commendable. I rated this a 3.5 out of 5. Now let's move on to the final film of Phase 1, The Avengers, from 2012. I remember watching this movie in IMAX on opening weekend. It was my first and only midnight screening. I also went back to see it just for the post-credit scene. So it comes with a heavy heart that I say this film didn't hold up. The cinematography is reminiscent of a TV project, but with a much larger budget. I could easily see similarities between this movie's appearance and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I believe this is because Joss Whedon had mainly directed TV and only directed one film, Serenity, before this one. Much of this film is either exposition, some action, and set up for many things in the future of the MCU, although I think a lot of that was retroactive. I believe this is also the film that started the Marvel look for their films. Something that infuriated me while watching this movie is that Tony realizes Loki's plan to use Stark Tower twice in this film. The first time he realizes this is in the lab with a passing mention of his tower being self-sustaining and the only thing able to power the portal. Then he mentions it again after Coulson's death while talking to Steve, just before the final actual battle. I would have rated this a 3 out of 5, but I gave it a 0.5 star boost, mainly because it did what many thought was impossible, bringing together multiple mildly connected films into a connected and shared universe. Every studio has been chasing after that same thing since, to mostly failure. Now I'm doing something that I kind of backed away from in previous videos, but I'm bringing it back for this series, and maybe I'll continue doing this type of thing, an end ranking, mainly because this is 6 films and they're some of the same ratings. Anyways, at number 6 is The Incredible Hulk. At number 5 is Iron Man 2. At number 4, shocker, is The Avengers, which would have been fairly high. I think it was in my top 5 originally. And number 3 is Captain America the First Avenger. At number 2 is Thor. And at number 1 is Iron Man. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button. If you have any recommendations or thoughts about these films, please leave a comment down below. I didn't get to do as many of the videos that I wanted to do last month because of my travel schedule, but my schedule is open for the next couple of weeks, and I'm already working on part 2 of this series, so it should come out next week, and hopefully parts 3 and 4 can come out in subsequent weeks. Stay tuned for all of that and more. Thanks again for watching.
Not a great plan. When they come, and they will, they'll come for you.
I have an army.
We have a Hulk.
Oh, I thought the Beast had wandered off.
You're missing the point. There's no throne. There is no version of this where you come out on top. Maybe your army comes, and maybe it's too much for us, but it's all on you. Because if we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it.